All right, all right. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. My special guest tonight, you've seen her here before, is Tara Reade. She's an author, a former Senate aide, former RT contributor, and she's the host of Politics of Survival. Welcome back, Tara.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I am continuing contributor to RT proudly. Yes. So I continue to contribute geopolitical analysis. So I love that. And it's wonderful to be back.
Awesome time. So before we get into what is happening right now, because for those who may not be aware, you were actually living in Russia for quite some time. And I know you went there originally to promote your book. Can we go through the steps of you going to Russia and why you could not come back to the United States for such a long time?
Sure. In May of last year, a year ago, last May, I was promoting my book, as you said, which has been translated into Russian. It's now out, and also there were other languages that may have been interested, which I'm still pursuing. So it was coming out in Russian. I wanted to see Moscow. I wanted to see Russia for myself because of all the press that Russia gets. I wanted to really understand it. So, I was just going on a sightseeing thing for like a week, and I was doing some press for the book and then meeting with the translator. And then I was given information that if I tried to come back, there would be a problem, that I could be arrested. And then I started getting a lot of death threats, like right before I left, and had posted about that. And so I contacted some former intelligence, and then also Matt Gaetz' office had been talking to me because I was going to be testifying against Biden on the possibly on the whistleblower committee. So we had something that we were going to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and to bring some light into the corruption and cover-ups by Joe Biden and his administration. And then, I contacted his office and I told him what was going on, and he wasn't the only person. Like, there were several people, including my attorneys, that said, it's not looking good for you to come back. You could be arrested under this regime. So I applied for political asylum in Moscow, Russia, and it's very difficult to get. But they investigated the case and felt that I met the standard, and I needed protection for my physical safety. And so I had that, and I stayed in Russia and worked. I still work for RT. I've been working for them. And luckily they gave me more work and then I was able to, live in Moscow, and it's a very affordable place to live. It's quite a sticker shock. So we can get into that later. But so then I stayed, and then, as time progressed, my attorney they filed a suit against the DOJ, and they filed a complaint with the Attorney General about my violation of human rights, and with the UN. And so we haven't gotten responses yet. However, the federal case was accepted, and it is started. And the federal case, basically, we're talking about how the DOJ and FBI illegally surveilled me. In 2019, when I first came forward, apparently they had a FISA hearing. And what a FISA hearing does is it allows them to do warrantless searches of U.S. citizens' communications. And in order to qualify for the FISA, there has to be some sort of worry about espionage. Now, as you know, I came forward about working for Joe Biden, his corruption, and also what he did to me, which was sexual assault in 1993. I had filed a paper. There's another paper from 1996, a legal document that refers to it. There's witnesses. I had corroborating evidence, but I was unable to get an investigation against Joe Biden. So when it came public in 2019, I was immediately called a Russian spy, even though I had no connection to Russia at all whatsoever. And so it went from there. I got attacked by the media. Joe Biden weaponized, with Anita Dunn's help, who was the White House, advisor at the time. She also the founder of Time's Up, ironically. With help from her and others, the media, the legacy media, went after me and destroyed my reputation. I mean, Sabby, I lost everything. I don't even have a car anymore. Like, I lost everything. I couldn't get work here, substantial work here. because I was considered a security risk. It was very, very hard. I started doing op-eds and things for RT, and then, piecemealing independent work that I could, but nothing stable, So that was also part of my decision. Since I was in Moscow, I was offered a stable position and, able to live. And so I did. But when the attorneys were able to file these claims, when you're under political asylum, you come up every year. They review your case and say, okay, where are you now? And I voluntarily, even before my year was up, said, hey, you know what? I think I'm okay. I want to try to go back to the US. I really want to attend a family event at my daughter's wedding. I want to try to file these charges. My attorney needed me here in the US to do certain things. So I wanted to come and try, and they were, of course, Russia's been very gracious to me, and the people that they said, okay, and it's your legal obligation, really, if you feel like your life is no longer in immediate danger, to inform them. And I wasn't getting any death threats like I was in 2020 all the way through to 2023 and 24 when I left last year. So I came back and I didn't get too much hassle. I feel like the protection around Biden had started to erode. And, it was right around the time people were starting to the knives were turning right on him. A2 Brutus, so his house of cards has been collapsing. What's frustrating for me, though, is everyone's, the media, the legacy media, is destroyed my reputation, but has done nothing to retract. When I've proven the things that they were accusing me were wrong, they've done nothing to detract it. There's still a lot of hate and vitriol about me out there. So I still once in a while get threats, or people say, hey, you should be pushed out the window, and things like nasty things. Those kinds of threats I'm used to. The more egregious ones, Sabby, were ones I was on your show about, like, for instance, people showing up at my daughter's work, doxing her, people showing up at her residence, people showing up and trying to take my horse, people threatening to actually come to my house and kill me. Those were really serious. And I think with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, you see how dangerous it can be, that kind of vitriol. So that's where we're at now. I'm here. I've been filing a case against Joe Biden because there's no statute of limitations in DC for third-degree sexual abuse. So I have filed. We're wanting to file that case and get Merrick Garland to start the investigation so it can be filed. But we needed a consensus. We needed a mandate. And so far, I've gotten almost 5,000 signatures. So if some of your listeners, if they support me, if they believe what happened to me in 1993, please, we want at least an investigation. Sign the petition. That's all you have to do is sign it. And, we're trying to get to 5,000. And then we're going to take it to Merrick Garland and say, okay, you have no excuse. There's a mandate. Let's file this.
And here is that petition. I just want to show everyone here. It says, no man is above the law. Charge President Joseph Biden with sexual abuse. Right now, there's 4,618 signatures. Again, the goal is 5,000. Eric, if you can add share the link to this petition in the chat so that people can sign the petition. This is very, very important, because one of the questions I do have for you, Tara, since it is apparent that Joe Biden is not going to be running for re-election, people can no longer use the excuse, well, you can't charge a sitting president. So right. He will be, and I would also add that I think that if he doesn't feel like he's fit to run for re-election, then he also shouldn't be serving as president right now. But that's a whole other topic.
That's absolutely on point. Absolutely.
So there's that. But that being said, people can no longer use that excuse, because come November, or actually, come January next year, whether it's Trump or Kamala, we all know it will not be Joe Biden. So I'm just wondering, with your particular situation, do you think things could be better for you this time around legally?
I don't know, because, and I think, I don't know if things are going to be better for Americans all the way around, because we're on the precipice of World War III. And, Kamala Harris was like down for every single policy of Biden. You have the same administration, you have the same, and what people need to understand is they're the front people, right? But it's the people working behind the scenes. It's the Anthony Blinkens, it's the, Victoria Newlands, although she's stepped down, she's still advising. So you still have the hawks in there. So for me, because the issue is, are they going to go after me for the sealed case in Northern California, accusing me supposedly of some sort of espionage or whatever, which is, not true. Then I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, because if it's the same administration, they're going to be trying to save his legacy, right? I don't think it's going to have the same bite. I don't think it's kind of like a barking dog, but I don't know. You see so many Americans, like, they're still going after the Uhuru group, as you know, the Uhuru 3, and I'm very concerned for them. Their hearing is in September. And, they're the Black Socialist Party that were standing against the war against Russia via Ukraine. And they made a lot of, stances about that. And because of that, they were accused of sowing discord. They're now facing almost 10 years in prison for that. They didn't have any Russian ties. They didn't have Russian money. That's not true. They had like a meeting they went to for Friendship Russia. Well, I lived in Moscow, so I don't even know what they're going to say for me. But what I can tell you is that I've been very open and honest, and I'm not a spy, and they are not spies either. And so this fear mongering that's come through the Biden administration, it's still present with Harris.
That's right. And another thing I want to add to, and Tara, please explain to people about this as well. Going back, didn't your mother speak to former talk show host Larry King?
Yes, you can find that pretty easily online on Twitter. People put it up every once in a while. The Larry King show in 1993, she did. Yeah. So there's a recording of that.
Right. That's exactly what I thought. A lot of people don't want to mention that or bring that up.
No.
And there are a number, particularly Democrat, and this should not be a partisan issue, but it is. But there are a number of Democrat politicians that are also aware of that. And I've seen them make statements during interviews, or whether it's on social media, basically alluding to, oh, well, this is just a smear campaign because Joe Biden decided to run for president in 2020. And I said, well, Joe Biden's run for president multiple times. So It's not like that was the first time he was running for president. But I do sincerely hope that you do get some type of justice here, because, and it's not just you, there were other women that came forward about Joe Biden. And a lot of people forget to mention that.
Well, yeah, they've been smashed. They've been silenced. There's 7 other women. They destroyed them in the press, calling them crazy, or different versions of that. One of them was a young politician in Nevada, and it destroyed her career. She no longer, you don't hear of her. Like, she's gone, Lucy Flores. And that's really sad. Like, he has so much power. He's destroyed so many people's lives, not to mention funding a genocide that, and funding this, almost 200 billion has gone to Ukraine. And now as you know, the Pentagon just announced that they accidentally gave Zelensky 61 billion that they can't account for. Come on. Like, I just feel like we're living in a cartoon at this point. All this business back and forth about, is he running, is he not? And then him putting up a letter, but you don't see him. And then they show him, but you don't see him speaking. It's all just, I don't know. I feel like it's a very dark theater that we're in right now. It's just, and the American people are feeling angry and frustrated. And then you have the attempted assassination of Donald Trump as well in the midst of all this. And, I think people are really feeling dismal. At least I know I am, and politically homeless about, like, where to go when you vote come election time for a leader. Like, who's anti-war? I don't know. Like, are there any anti-war candidates?
Well, Jill Stein is anti-war. Claudia De La Cruz is anti-war. Dr. Cornel West is anti-war. But I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. And I'm curious your take on the media's response. I saw a video of Van Jones crying because he said, I love this man, and referring to Joe Biden. He said, I love this man. I've seen videos of Rachel Maddow saying he's a good man. He's a decent man. What is your response to that? All of these media pundits that claim that Joe Biden is a great person that they love so dearly.
It's really upsetting, actually. For me, it's an emotional response because I know the man and Joe Biden isn't. And I do know some of these media personalities that don't think that when the camera's turned off. I've heard them when their mics are off. They don't like Joe Biden. They never did. He was considered a blowhard and all of that. As far as Van Jones goes, give him an Academy Award and let him move on. I mean, come on. Like that's just, I don't even know if he believes his own narrative or if he said it so much that now he just believes it. But it's such nonsense. Joe Biden's not your friendly grandpa. He's short-tempered. He funded a genocide. He's funding hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are going to their grave for this endless war that he benefited from personally, not just, it didn't just go to defense contract. He pocketed some of that money, and that's well documented. It's being exposed. He committed a war crime with Nord Stream, which Seymour Hersh revealed publicly, and then, was blasted for it, but it's the truth. I mean, he has been one of the most racist, misogynistic, warmongering. He will go down in history, in my opinion, as the worst president in history. And I think it's abhorrent that they're making him some sort of hero. Not only that, though, he didn't even want to step down. This whole thing about, look at the grace he has and the sacrifice and stuff. He didn't want to step down. They had to muzzle him, basically, or I don't know what's happened to him, because you only see a letter, right? And with his signature, but he never gave an address. Not one of the family gave an address. And then the one person that did was the uncle who they call a drunk and don't listen to him. But he was revealing the fact that, that he's really ill and that he's probably on death's door. Well, you could see it. It was like, so it was, people were joking. It was like that movie Weekend at Bernie's. But the whole thing is, when Joe Biden was lucid, which I knew him then, he was short-tempered, very, very elitist, very, more into the power and what he was doing than he was into representing constituents. So I'm not just saying that because of what happened to me, because I'm bitter about it, because it's more than that. It's deeper than that. It really disillusioned me to see the amount of corruption that I saw at that young age. And it really changed the way I looked at politics and the Senate being in his office, because I saw it close up at work, and I was participating in it. They were wanting me to be complicit in covering certain things. And, it's gone to a level that's unbelievable. I mean, we have these politicians that have been in there since I was in my 20s. They're still there, and they're multimillionaires. We did not set up the system for politicians to become multimillionaires. They were supposed to do public service and then go back to their farms or their businesses or whatever it is they did. But that's it. Serve a certain amount of time. That was the whole purpose, not to have what we have now, which is basically crony capitalism.
That's right. 100%. How do you feel about some of the people that say that they were pretty close to the Biden family? For example, RFK Jr., when he first announced that he was running, he said that he's friends with the Biden family. I mean, he's been a little bit more harsher towards him since. But when he was first running through the Democratic Party, he said he didn't want to speak ill will towards Joe Biden because he was friends with the Biden family. So you have him. You have Mika and Joe from Morning Joe that made it very clear to the public that they're also friends with Joe Biden and the Biden family. I mean, to me, it just seems like a conflict of interest, especially for those that are in media.
It's a mafia state. That's what we're living in. We're living in a mafia state. These are gangsters. As far as RFK goes, look who his daughter-in-law is. She works for the CIA. She wrote a memoir about it, right? She's very clear about her loyalty to the CIA. Yet he talks about the deep state. He's not RFK is not an outsider at all. And for him to say he's friends with the Biden family, well, people are being careful and walking on eggshells, because it's not about the Bidens, it's about the people around him that have a lot of power and can do destruction, because right now Biden, is not capable of that. But the people around him are. People I knew that are still around him, like Ted Kaufman, and others, and Dennis Toner and Anita Dunn and some of the others that are some former Obama staff. You've got Obama pulling the strings behind the scenes. And he also did not, if you notice, Obama did not endorse Kamala. And I know it's controversial to say, but I think they're going to try to throw up Hillary at the convention. I think it's going to be an open convention. I think they're going to try to throw her up.
I told people not to sleep on Hillary because she just keeps popping back up into the spotlight every now and then. Like, you won't hear from her for a couple of months and then she appears again. But it is very telling that Obama didn't endorse Kamala. And honestly, I personally don't believe that Barack Obama thinks that Kamala can win, that she can beat Donald Trump. I also don't think that Barack Obama believes that she's the right person for the job.
You're right. I agree. I mean, and I think too, you have a lot of these things like RFK says he's friends. Well, I volunteered for the RFK Jr. Memorial, for his father's memorial, the 25th anniversary in 1993, right after what happened with Joe Biden. Someone in his office who's also a witness to what happened knows what happened to me. They treated me very well, and they knew very well how Biden was. They were not friends with him. I mean, maybe RFK's had some sort of friendship since, but my memory is that there was a little bit of animosity there. He was actually closer. His best friend was Strom Thurmond. That was one of and Orrin Hatch. Orrin Hatch was who Joe Biden had lunch with quite a bit. Christopher Dodd, these people. The whole Ted Kennedy thing, he was friends with them. Ted Kennedy did some, but there was also tension there, and egos there. And so, yeah, there was a bit, it's not all what it seems. Just like Obama and Biden are not that close, because Obama tried to make horribly racist remarks. I remember Joe Biden casually being racist in the office. Like, that's who he is. And they try to make him out to be this nice, really progressive, liberal, neoliberal grandpa. And he is not. He's a megalomaniac. And he's also a warmonger. He's a hawk.
How do you feel about the way he was towards Anita Hill? Because one of the things that I bring up to people who complain about the votes of the Supreme Court justices, so they can complain that it's a conservative court. Well, I always go back to Clarence Thomas, because I remind people that had it not been for Joe Biden, who was the chair of that committee, of that hearing that Anita Hill, she was testifying in front of them, he was the chairman. And he was the one that wouldn't allow Anita Hill's witnesses to testify. And Anita Hill, and for those who don't know, I don't know how young everyone is in the chat, but Anita Hill had evidence against Clarence Thomas, and she had witnesses, and Joe Biden would not allow the witnesses to testify. And I still say, till this day, had those witnesses have testified, Clarence Thomas might not be sitting in the Supreme Court right now.
And that's interesting you brought that up, because I talked with Anita Hill. She called me in 2020, and it was right after Joe Biden had called her to apologize. And she put me in her book, my case, in her book, which people can read her book. And so she had a very contentious relationship. She ended up, I think she was hopeful she could try to get to the Supreme Court, or whatever it was, whatever ambition she has. I think she ended up like staying in his camp for the election and not Trump's. But the point is that she was very dubious about him all of a sudden trying to apologize to her. And they tried to destroy her life. Again, that same machine really tried to destroy, it's not for me to read her book and see what she wishes to share publicly, but they went after her in every way you can imagine, personally. And I think she had a lot of empathy for what I was going through at that time, because New York Times and Washington Post, basically the summer of 2020, were just using me as target practice,
Mm-hmm. No, it's 100% true. I think that this is why it's hilarious to me when I hear the Democratic Party or Democrat politicians, particularly those that were backing Joe Biden back then, when they say believe women, or they're calling out accusations against Donald Trump, but everybody wants to ignore your accusations and other women's accusations against Joe Biden. And everybody wants to say, well, it's just Tara Reade. It wasn't just Tara Reade. There were other women that accused Joe Biden. And so it is very frustrating to me when I do hear people say, oh, he's been such a great person and he's going to have a great legacy. No, to me, Joe Biden's legacy is he's accused of sexual assault. He's a genocider. He's a racist. He was friends with the segregationists. He told people he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. To me, that is Joe Biden's legacy. And I feel like a lot of people just want to focus on him working with Barack Obama. But some of us remember a different side of Joe Biden and some of the things that he said and some of the things that he has done. And it just drives me crazy that these media pundits, this is why I hate that it's so partisan. Because MSNBC, CNN, we know we're going to support the Democratic Party for the most part. Fox News is going to support the Republican Party for the most part. So I can watch Fox News and I can hear them call out these things about Joe Biden, but then I look on MSNBC and they're not going to call it out. I can watch MSNBC and watch them call out things about Donald Trump, but then I can look at Fox News and I know they're not going to call it out. So there's no consistency when it comes to the media.
You're absolutely right. But we also need to hold our feet to the fire of the independent media, because they tend to, like, for instance, you are the exception, but you bring me on your show, for instance. Other people have, Katie Halper initially did, and then you had others that brought forward my story. But for the most part, you look at the independent media, they don't say a word about my story. And I had sealed warrants on all my communications and a case against me with a grand jury impaneled and death threats. And yet you don't hear a word out of some of those, and we won't say them here, but we know who they are. They're the sausage fest that is. We don't hear from them. I'm sorry, but that's another word. It's dominated by men, and they literally don't talk about it because whatever reason, they tiptoe around it. Maybe they might mention me in passing, but I'd never be on their show and they'd never really talk about my case. But my case is relevant because if they're going after the right and the left, and that's what people need to understand. It's a duopoly, right? So the Department of Justice and FBI, an intelligence agency that's hijacked our country, are now have turned their scope to Americans that are speaking out or, raising a fuss about whatever. And I obviously spoke out quite loudly and with really no backing. On my little podcast that I did on INN and my little, my book that came out in 2020 in the middle of pandemic. But otherwise, Sabby, really, I had the Megyn Kelly interview, and then Tucker Carlson lifted my story quite a bit, which really helped. And I think when he came and visited in Moscow, I was one of the few people he interviewed. That also kind of cleared the path for me to be able to come back to the US, because it was like a warning shot to the FBI and DOJ. Look, we're watching. We see you. You're going after American citizens. Stop it. And unfortunately, there's many people that don't have that publicity of any kind that are just being put in jail and being silenced. And so although it's really gotten extreme under the Biden regime, this is a problem that's been building since Obama, and I think just accelerating. And it's coming from the Democrats, but the Republicans are participating as well.
Why do you think some people are choosing not to have you on? I'm not going to talk about mainstream media. We know their agenda, but why do you feel that you are ignored by some in independent media of all spaces?
Because some of them have been accused of being a Russian asset. So it's all about me living in Russia. Nobody wants to challenge that narrative because we're still like in this weird McCarthyism. It could be because some of them simply don't believe what happened to me. Could be. I don't know. But I think a lot of it is they're worried that they'll lose access to certain people that they have, which is tenuous as it is, because pushing the envelope with other issues. It's like pick and choose. And that's why they call some independent media controlled opposition. And intelligence loves that. They love the fact that they can take a media like that's independent and say, okay, we'll let you go so far talking about Gaza. We'll let you go so far talking about Ukraine. But you go on this thing, we're going to shut you down. So it's like controlled opposition, and that's how it works. And it's not right. We should be lifting all the stories, and you do a good job with that, Sabby. In fact, I have to say this for your audience, you're one of the people I go to on Monday morning. I look at what you've been covering and what you're watching, and then it kind of gives me some guidance. So I appreciate what you do.
Oh, thank you. I'm curious. I want to know that. Have you ever been invited onto TYT?
No,
Interesting.
no,
Maybe we should have a petition for that.
no,
No,
no.
it's I think that I don't know what's going on with some people, but I've brought people on the show that I heavily disagree with, and we've had drag out arguments on the show, but I don't
Yeah.
think anybody should be prevented from telling their stories. So to me, it's just, I don't agree with that. But
Yeah, people are really scared about the Russia thing because, I mean, I've been telling the truth about Russia. It's beautiful. It's an easier country to live in financially if you're an American that's been struggling. And I'm going to give an example, which I've never given to anyone. I'll give this to you. In 2020, I never brought this up because I was going through what I was going through trying to reveal the Joe Biden story. I had a reaction to the Pfizer shot. I had the Pfizer COVID, whatever. It was required of me to travel, and I was traveling somewhere, and I had, how they were requiring that. So I got the Pfizer vaccine, and 2 days later, I was in the ICU they could not get my heart regulated for 3 days. And then I got an aneurysm, and I still have it in my heart. And then I was told that the protocol I had to follow was, some medicines that are quite expensive. One of those medicines, I just went to go refill it, and I can't refill it. It prevents heart attacks and strokes. It's $2,133.
what?
Yes. And it's a medicine that's given quite often after you've had these kinds of issues to prevent stroke or heart attack. And I said to the pharmacist, I don't have this laying around. They're like, most people don't. Most people can't get it. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah. So imagine the same company that gives you the vaccine that causes the harm. Then you have to take this one other medication the rest of your life to prevent further harm. But that is so prohibitive because it's, $2,000 is rent, right? For one person. So I just, yeah, it's amazing. That same medicine, and this is what I wanted to share about Russia. You know how much it is, Sabby, in there in Moscow?
How much?
$50. The equivalent of $50. So what's happening? And that's what I want to say to people. What they're giving this terrible narrative of Russia, but Russia's capitalist. You have efficient transportation, you have education, you have healthcare. Like when I was there, I had to get some healthcare. I never spent more than $200. I had full healthcare that was, prescriptions I could afford that were in the $10 to $20 range or whatever. You have all kinds of ways to cheap transportation, metro, taxi. I didn't need a car. Very efficient, very clean, very safe to walk around. And I went to other cities. I went to, Sochi. I was in Vladivostok, which is the Far East, across the country. I was also in rural areas because I wanted to see the rural areas outside in the Caucasus. And there's a lot of building there. And what you're seeing is, and I'm saying this as a geopolitical analyst, I'm not trying to be partisan or give some sort of, whatever, propaganda. This is actually what I saw and what I experienced. People are thriving. The middle class and the working class are thriving. They're building. Young people. I met people at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which I spoke at. I met people at the Youth Festival in Sochi, and they were young entrepreneurs between 25 and 35. They're starting businesses. You can afford an apartment. 80 to 95% of people in Moscow own their own flat plus a dacha, which is a little country house. They don't struggle. You don't have that same desperation there. So when I came back a couple months ago to for the reasons that I outlined to you, I was really shocked by how shabby Seattle looks, New York looks, because I went to Seattle, New York, Savannah, and a couple other cities. I was shocked how much decline there's been in the East Coast and on the West Coast and the cities. Rural areas, it's empty storefronts, but not what you're seeing the crime-wise, homelessness, whole tent cities in Seattle. People walking around like zombies, talking to themselves. And I'm seeing it. I'm not just like seeing like little videos, like I'm seeing it in real life. And it's so sad for me to see the country I was born in just decline, you know, to such an expedient, way. So I think what they're hiding from us about Russia is that they're combining kind of a socialistic, the old way of providing education, healthcare that's affordable, and housing. And then, investing in small businesses, cutting the red tape. In America, we're not doing that. And you see the results. People have nowhere to live. They have nowhere to be. They're dying.
Yep.
And I just, I really wish people would put aside their bias that they hear about Russia and don't think about what country it is. Look at their system and say, wait a second, they're doing a lot better than we are. Is that why they're trying to make them sound so terrible? I don't know.
That's right. That's right. Well, Tara, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people go to follow your work?
At Reade Alexandra on Twitter. So it's at READE Alexandra. And then if you look up tarareadepodcast.com, that brings you to my link tree, and that's all my links.
Awesome, Tara. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.